Hello, everybody out there. It's Adonica from You Do You Unfilter, and I have the privilege to sit with Mark today, Mark Wade, and I would love to do his intro, but wow, the email that came to me, I just thought, you know what, it's not going to be, I'm not going to do it justice. I want Mark to introduce himself because, man, this guy's on a mission, and I think everyone should actually listen and hear what he has to say because I was blown away. Hello, Mark.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Adonica.
I know
How
it's
are
good
you?
morning. I'm good. You?
Excellent. I'm great, 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 great. It's definitely a pleasure to sit here, before you through the world of innovation and technology, of
Oh,
course,
yeah. Oh,
and be provided with the opportunity to share a story, right?
yes.
In full disclosure and a full disclaimer, this story is going to be real. It's going to be deep. It's going to be honest, and it's going to be authentic. Because that's how I live my life, and that's how I'm going to share my story. And for
Yay.
those that can relate to it, they're going to relate, And if they can't themselves relate, they'll know someone that will be able
Absolutely.
to relate. So as many people as I can touch with my story, to empower them, to help them, to assist them, to walk alongside them. That's what I intend to do with this story,
That's
which
fantastic.
is
And just a little bit of a side note, can you give everyone a little bit of background about yourself? What
yes,
profession
absolutely,
and all that great
sure.
stuff?
Yeah. So, let's go real deep.
Okay,
Let's get into it here.
let's get into it.
Um, because a lot of so, okay, so I'm gonna go back to childhood here for a second because there's a very linear path when I look back at how I got to where I am today, and it makes sense now. A lot of it is kind of based on what you might be able to say misfortune in a way, but a
Mhm.
lot of my story is going to keep there's going to be certain themes that are going to keep popping up here, mantras that I truly believe in, such as no one hurts alone and no one heals alone, right? We can come back to that.
Mhm.
Concepts around resiliency, concepts around trauma, concepts around what I call post-traumatic growth, or visioning your trauma experience and learning how to maximize the growth opportunities. So I'll get into this story, but it's important to sort of like underpin this story with we have two ways of looking at life. Everything is adversity and a problem, or we see problems and adversity as opportunities for solution and growth. So we always have two ways to look at every situation. I choose to acknowledge problems and difficulties, but I reframe them as opportunities for solution and growth. And when you do that, you actually start to embrace problems and adversity because you know the potential that can come from them. Because for a lot of people, problems and difficulties are like a fence, and it
Yes,
shuts people down.
yes,
But when you learn to embrace them and harness them, and overcome them again through the concepts of like resiliency, you're constantly almost reinventing yourself. And in doing so, you're adding layers to your lived experience that when you communicate and talk to other people, is grossly interpreted as what we call authenticity. So when I'm in the ER, when I'm in the ICU, and I'm talking to individuals who have been through a very difficult situation, the difference with me talking to them and maybe someone who's like 20 talking to them is that I'm not just talking to them from the concept of an academic book perspective. I know where they are because either one way or another, I've probably been there, and I'm providing a lived experience, true, authentic lens where I'm embracing their story and their feelings and emotions, and I'm giving back to them what I call healthcare,
yeah.
true
Healthcare.
healthcare,
Hmm.
holistic care of
Right.
self, of mind, of body, of spirit, and that's a big difference, and we need more of that,
Absolutely.
and
I
I
agree.
gladly give it.
I agree. Absolutely. So your background's in nursing.
Yes, so I'm of Irish descent,
Oh,
and I'll get like I said, I'm gonna get real deep, real honest, real authentic here. I did grow up in a family where, my father, this is very typical old school Newfoundland Irish background here. Father left the home at 3. Oh, sorry, my mother had She went through what we call today some issues with codependency, right?
Hmm.
Where she, attracted attention from what we would call abusive alcoholic men, to which there were more than too many who came through various homes. I would say between ages of 4 and 19, I probably lived in 18 different dwellings. I think we were evicted more than 3 or 4 times, and that caused some interesting disruptions along the way, because I grew up in a scenario where I wasn't well connected to my mother's side of the family
Hmm.
or my father's side of the family, mainly because my father wasn't there to do the introductions. And because my mother unconsciously was marred in concepts of guilt and shame,
Right.
spirals or cycles, as we would psychologically reflect on them today, but not conscious at the time. And, when that happens to a young child, they will start to grow up without the concepts of self awareness, self esteem, self worth, self identity. And it will put you on a very rather confusing path for, a good 20 plus years. So I experienced all that. But in doing so, and again, so that's a problem. So let's look at the solution. I didn't consciously think about that at the time, but I was already implementing what I say today back then. So I ended up immersing myself in in leaving the home, because for me a home wasn't a safe place. So I spent the least amount of time home as I possibly could. And so what I ended up doing was studying. I ended up taking a position in university as a researcher for the Faculty of Medicine. I was a researcher for the Faculty of Nursing. I even, and this is after studies in psychology and sociology. I did my nursing degree was actually a 2 year accelerated degree.
Oh, okay.
And it was in that 2 year accelerated degree where I would meet my future partner, Suyen Lam, who we'll get into shortly how that played out. So even coming from that adversity, I still was able to meet who I would, say today would be, my partner, right?
Right.
My life partner, that we met at university. Then we traveled and worked in Toronto. We worked in Yellowknife together. We worked in Vancouver together.
Hmm.
That's 7 or 8 years of a relationship. We'll come
Yeah.
back to that. But I put myself in a lot of different areas. During that time, I even lived and traveled and worked. This is fascinating. Before I met Sui, and she had actually did a year teaching English in Korea, South Korea, and
Oh,
so did I. And
yeah.
as it turns
Okay.
out, after the fact, we were actually both lived and worked there at the same time, and we both attended the World Cup of Soccer that was held in Korea at that time. And we didn't even know that connection until we were in school together back in MUN
Wow. That's
in Newfoundland.
crazy. Love it.
How
Love it.
fascinating.
Love it. You love it.
And at the same time, I worked in Taiwan as an English teacher, Hong Kong, Singapore, and it actually ended up bringing me down to Bali, Indonesia,
Hmm.
which today, 24 years later, I'm still involved with because I actually have 2 companies that I run down there. And the reason I do that down there is because the profits that I gain from my companies there, they don't come back to Canada. I reinvest them there to empower an individual to be able to empower their family, then to empower the community, because the average income down there
Wow.
is only $300 a month.
Yeah.
So what I'm able to give them through Canadian dollars, again, through like what I mainly focus on is a lot of philanthropy.
Yeah.
So I've put people through yoga education programs down there, international
Wow.
certifications,
Yeah.
even trauma-informed programs through the University of Buffalo in New York, as well as scooter and jewelry businesses, because then they can say charge and or earn in Canadian currency,
Hmm.
and based on a $300 a month level to elevate them to $1,000 a month drastically changes
Life.
them, their family, and their community. So
Oh, wow.
philanthropy and giving back became a massive tenet in my life. And not to, I'm not trying to knock on the family here, but during the travels when I was over there and I was sending money back home, again, it was a difficult time for my mother. I understand that today, but she had spent all the money that I
Oh,
had earned. And when I came home from Asia, I actually came home to no money and a lot of really nasty letters from collection agencies.
oh, gee.
And at a very early age in university, I had to file for bankruptcy. And at the time, this is before Suyen, but I was seeing this lovely lady, and her mother paid for my university for nursing, the 2 year degree, and I worked at her restaurant,
Yeah.
making Costco runs, etc., to pay back the debt that I
Oh,
incurred from her helping me out. So that's that part of the story, and that's how I got the nursing, and that's where I met Suyen Lam. And so I'll just share that story quickly. So, we met way back about 2007. There's so much more to the story. So, but that piece of the story, we met in 2007. We traveled the world, together. We lived and worked in different hospitals, and this is where everything. So,
oh,
so I
take your
met her.
time.
Yeah,
Take,
there's just so much. There's so much here, so much. I'll keep coming. I'll come back and
that's
cross-referencing
okay. Take
pieces.
your time. That's all good. It's all good.
So this woman was nothing short of an angel, and I'll be honest, like even to this day, this woman, like Swean Lamb, this woman underpins or is my motivation. That even though the experience I went through her brought me to the brink of my own death, quite literally, figuratively, via concepts of like suicide. Like I
Yeah.
said, this conversation is going to be real. It's going to be deep. It's going to be honest. It's going to be authentic. So let me, get into that story a little bit. So, we met 2007. At that time, I think I was seeing someone, she was seeing someone. We ended up working together in Toronto. One thing led to another. Our relationships didn't work out, and we began a relationship. We met a lot of people, traveled a lot. We were very astute in investing. I was on the front page of the Globe and Mail into business for investing. At that time, I was very academically involved. I was looking to create a journal, what I call Health and Humanities, back at MUN. Um, Not received at the time. Maybe I was a bit too ahead of myself, but people like myself and Darlene Schindel, who's also well connected with like, your Tammy Laudners and whatnot,
Yeah.
um, are looking at revising that from an
Yeah.
intercollegiate, interprovincial perspective to mentor the students today for the realities of tomorrow via collaboration, innovation, mentorship, and leadership. So a lot of these projects that I'll get into and we'll end up discussing come from and are honestly are fomented from the energy and love that I hold for that woman. So, someone might say, so, okay, enough. Tell us about that woman. Yeah, sure. So what is it? So what's
Okay,
what's
wait.
the what's the story there? Okay. So, like I said, we met
I'm
we met in
good.
nursing
I
school.
love listening. I'm just gonna sit back and just let you go because you know what? This is super powerful and might make me cry, by the way. So,
Yes,
but it's all good because I can see how the passion in you. So please take your time. There is
yeah,
no rush
yeah.
on this story. And I know the listeners will love that they could probably just hear that so much passion in you. So right, take your time.
I think that's you know, passion is a very powerful word.
Yeah.
Passion leads people to life and it also leads people to death.
Mm.
And even life and death, it really depends on how you want to frame it and how you want to see it. When you frame it and see passion and life and death from the experience of being a gift, from the experience of empowerment, from the ability to empower others,
Mm.
um, you know, passion takes on a whole new life. Passion is my fuel. Passion, and like I said, my fuel is my connection to Sweden, and so basically, so what happened? We met in university 2007, lived, worked together, traveled together, met a lot of friends together. And then in 2013, myself and Svian traveled to Thailand, and we were on the island of Koh Samui because we were attending a mutual best friend's wedding, who was from Newfoundland as well. Svian is actually her name's Svian Lam, so that's a cross. Her mother was from Birmingham, England, and her father's from Malaysia. So she's this insanely, insanely beautiful, sort of half English, half Asian looking woman, with the darker features, with more rounder eyes, and this adorable British accent.
Yeah.
She's a very unique woman. So, we went to what they call the chicks and hens ceremony of a wedding. So the same day, the guys go off and do their thing,
Mhm.
and then the women go off and do their thing, and then later that night you come together and sit at the bar and you're dancing and having fun, which we all did. So, we left that event. It was pretty late, probably 2 or 3 in the morning. And we got dropped off in Koh Samui at our hotel, and our hotel was like configured kind of in here. So there's like a
Hmm.
little bend in the road. Speed
Okay.
limit's 30, right? It wasn't well lit at the time, but I did travel back there many years later to just sort of review all this and do my own little ceremony and ritual. But there's a little bend curve, so you're kind of going straight, and there's a little bend that you have to navigate, and then go straight again because there's a hotel part in here, right? That sits on the beach. So we got dropped off at the hotel, and she said, we don't have any water or snacks in the room, and just around the corner, maybe 200 feet plus minus, there's a little 7-Eleven. 7-Elevens are just everywhere in the world, obviously,
Yeah.
just everywhere. So she said, can we just backtrack here to 7-Eleven and grab some water? And she had this thing, and I can't look at this till this day. I can't stand the sight of them because it makes my stomach just like tighten and cringe. She liked those hard cheesies.
The
Not
Hawkins.
the fluffy cheesies,
The
the
Hawkins?
harder ones.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Hawkins. Yeah, ex
yeah.
Hawkins.
She loved them. She loved them, right? She's like a little hard cheesy addict, right?
Yeah, that's
I
me.
can't like, yeah, if I see those in a store today, like I will tear still to this
Oh,
day. Right. So I can tell the story, but like I can't really get into her too much because then I won't be able to speak because
okay.
I'll get really emotional,
Okay.
you know, because when you love someone and you lose them to trauma, you don't stop loving them,
No,
ever,
never,
never for a day.
never.
And 11 years later, it'll be 12 years, March 31st this year, that she did pass away because when we were coming back from the cheesies and the water, they drive, in Thailand, they drive, it's opposite, right? They drive
Yes.
on the right
Yes.
side.
Yeah.
So I always, and especially since that day, and I always, like, I always strategically place myself to be on the outside. If I'm
Right.
walking, with a friend, male or female, I don't care. I'll put myself on the outside in this situation, I guess, it was late and whatnot. If we had been, in Canada walking on the other side, I was on the outside. It was kind of just reversed in my brain somehow. I guess I just didn't think of it, and we were just talking about the evening, and we literally, my last memory of her and the conversation was her smiling and laughing. We saw nothing, heard nothing, and then the next thing I know, she's 50 feet in the air, flying through the air because she was struck by what turned out to be a distracted drunk driver. Um, and and again, how do you explain that? I call it experiencing what would, because it takes some time. It's like an onion effect. That's obviously, it's like cracking open an onion, but then
Yeah.
there's going to be layers and
Layers.
layers that have to unravel. And I would say in my own personal journey, to really get through those layers to get to the core and essence of like who I am as an individual, and then start to kind of build back on top of and reformulate who I am
Yeah.
outside of all the hopes and dreams and purpose that me and her had created. Because obviously, in that moment, all those things are obliterated. It's like
Yeah.
literally a nuclear fallout. The man stopped. I screamed. He drove off. And in hindsight, I remember, tending to her, and it's like I said, again, right? Disclaimer, real deep, honest, and authentic. So when I tended to her, and I put my hand on the back of her head, the fragments were in my fingers. So being an ER, ICU, advanced critical care, advanced practice nurse, I knew what was happening, at that time. She was already experiencing what we call cosmal breathing, which is basically, your brain has been shut off. You're just at the, what we call the reptilian system of breathing.
Right.
It's like an autonomic function.
Yeah.
There's nothing conscious in that situation. So I already knew we were going to lose that game. And, but I needed an ambulance, and I was in shock, for lack of a better word. And I remember standing in the road and yelling at cars. And I remember at the time thinking, why isn't anyone stopping? But when I look back on it now, would you stop? There's a woman crumpled on the side of a road. There's a gentleman, this big giant white guy, right, standing there covered in
Yeah.
blood, screaming
Yeah.
at cars. Would
Yeah.
you stop? Maybe not. Maybe you'd just be terrified.
And
So
you're
I
in
get it
a
in
and you're in
hindsight.
Thailand. You're in
Yeah.
Thailand, two sorts of foreign country.
Yeah.
Seeing you there. Yeah, that would be tough. That'd be tough.
And this is 2 days before the wedding, 2 days
Right.
before the wedding.
Yeah.
So finally, so what I did, I said, I don't care. So I stood in the road, I stood in the middle of the road, and I said, come hell or high water, the next car that comes, they're either going to run me over or they got to stop. So they stopped. And I said, look, I just need an ambulance. And they called the ambulance and they came and picked her up. Um, you know, and I'll before I get in that part, I just want to take one little step back right quick. Because I don't know if anyone else, if anyone who ends up listening to this or, if this hits home for them, they'll understand that level of trauma in that situation because the concepts of post-traumatic stress, the hallmarks of post-traumatic stress, and I didn't know this at the time, I had to learn, are you develop concepts of hypervigilance. You end up trying to avoid a lot of memories. You're not embracing the situation because it's so painful and it's so triggering that you'll do everything in your power to avoid it. You'll end up having flashbacks during the daytime, which is like having a knife jammed in your stomach. Nightmares,
Yeah.
these are the hallmarks. And people can actually develop post traumatic stress without someone ever truly being injured. A person can be in a car accident and no one got injured, no one died, but it can be so traumatic to them that
Hmm.
they end up having a fear of driving,
No. Yep.
and they end up having a fear, uh, of traffic, for example. And I got all of it. And I'll get into it again after, but you know, think about when you were young and you ate or drank something and you got sick, right? Maybe you were already
Yeah.
sick and you ate like a protein bar and then you threw up.
Yeah.
Your brain, because this is one of the ways that humans survive, right? Because you got to keep, as humans, how did we survive? You don't have claws, you don't have fangs,
Yeah.
you don't have armor. We're not particularly strong in comparison to like apes or chimpanzees. We're not particularly, we're not fast. So how do we survive? A lot of how we survived actually, and this is what we're doing right now, a lot of how humans end up surviving this long was through
Yeah.
storytelling and coming together through what we call today, like say collaboration, but through family networks, community networks. We survived by supporting one another. That's how we survived and telling our stories. So if, back in the day, they sure didn't call each other Bob or Steve, but, let's say 2 million years ago, Mr. Steve, right? Whatever they called each other back then, ate a berry and threw up, that guy would never eat that berry again, or that
Yeah.
lady, and they would go back to their community or village or wherever they were and say, "Don't eat that berry," right?
Right.
So imagine a situation where the greatest pain you've ever felt in your life came from simultaneously experiencing the greatest love you've
Yeah.
ever felt in your life.
Yeah.
In that moment, and I've explained this in some other talks along the way, and this is, it took me a long time to come around this to understand the impact too. And this is the part where I say to her, like a lot of my passion is rooted in her. It's not because it's rooted in her memory. It's because I firmly believe that when she was hit by that vehicle, the moment that I could feel her spirit leaving, it was because it was palpable, it was tangible. I also feel, and it's hard to explain, but it feels like I felt like my body, spirit, and soul was tore open at that moment, and quite literally, part of her spirit like entered me,
Can I ask a quick
literally.
question here?
Uh,
At that moment, were you part of because that's 12 years ago and you did a journey after that. Did you know that was happening or it was just a big feeling because like I for myself and my experience when I've lost someone dear to me, I didn't know that I was feeling that way. It just happened. But as we know now and the research is that people's spirits do come up. Did you know that was happening, or you just had that feeling like that, like a feeling that she was embracing you as she left this beautiful planet? Like, did you like what I
I
try to make you understand. I'm very
Yeah,
curious
yeah,
about this.
yeah, sure. Yeah, the answer is yes and no,
Oh, okay.
right? And so the yes part is, and it wasn't even say her embracing me. Like I fully believe that a part of me is her. I
Right.
do.
Okay.
Like
Yes.
I feel like part of her spirit went back to the universe, but I
Mhm.
feel part of her spirit, I wouldn't
Stay
use
with
the word
you.
like reincarnation, but I feel like part of it because in that traumatic moment, like
Right.
I use that term like tore apart. because like I just feel too right to like to the level of like the atoms that constitute my cellular
Yeah.
components of who I
Yeah.
am, my constituents, right at that cellular level, were exposed, and part of her energetic spirit literally now resides in me and
Yeah.
actually serves sort of almost behind the scenes as like a guide. And my passion, I would arguably say, is her. So was I aware of it at the moment? The answer is yes. Was I aware of how that would manifest, and what would come of that, say, would be no. Did I feel her enter me? Yes. But at that time, did that sort of matter? No, because it actually created a tremendous amount of pain, actually. And again, remember, we're at a wedding.
Yeah.
So after and it's like a movie. Once we went to the hospital, I had to watch them pull her on from the stretcher to the table, and some of the memories I have are like her arm falling off the table and
Yeah.
blood dripping off her pinky, and I'm literally covered head to toe, and it's like a movie. I was leaning up against the wall, and one of the nurses came over and they pulled the curtain across and they were like, you know, um, can I help you? And it was definitely so devastating to say, like, can I help you? You
Yeah.
know, um,
Yeah.
because I
Mhm.
was thinking to myself, help me. Oh my God, like, how can you I don't need help here. I
Yeah.
need this woman to survive, right?
Right.
And I know that's not going to happen. So help me. I was like, oh my God, like even that the wording, right? And the
Yeah.
phrasing around that
Yeah.
took on a very different concept. And
Yeah.
I just remember like in a movie, just slumping down the wall, and there's this big blood stain,
Yeah.
and then one of the nurses got him over the sink to wash my hands. And I was just in like utter shock. And I got a taxi back to the hotel, and everyone else was back and they were all in the same room, So think about there's so much fallout came from this, and yet so much growth. So I knock on the door, and one of the guys who was at the wedding party opened the door, and here I'm standing there covered in blood, and he was like, and the look of shock on his face, and he's like, "What happened?" And I said, "Suyen is dead." And he said, "No, this is because it was March 31st, right? And then because of the time difference in Canada, it's April Fool's."
Right.
So at first, people didn't think, they thought I was joking, right? They were like, "Mark, that's really
Not
not
funny.
funny."
Yeah.
No, it's not funny. It's actually really not funny at all. And I said, "No, it's not, because it's not a joke." Uh, and so the music got shut off, and they all came to the door, and I just remember, like, people comforting me and whatnot, and lying on that bed in like in a fetal position, covered in blood, and just like primordially, the sounds that were coming from me, it's not even crying. These are not, you know, I learned after that, after there's moments I've been in with Suyen where I could kind of mostly keep my composure, but tears would just flow
Yeah.
because that level of pain comes from a place inside you that's so deep. It's not something, unless you have the lived experience, it's not something that people understand,
Yeah.
right? And we'll get into this a bit after, but this is where a lot of this has shaped me, obviously, dramatically, and my journey from experiencing post-traumatic stress, and then the concepts of, what we call, or for illustration, the phoenix rising from the ashes. Or
Yeah.
part of our conversation we had earlier, I said, for those who are like Christian, Psalm 23, right? Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I spent years walking in the valley of the shadow of death, not
Mm-hmm.
understanding where I came from, not understanding where I was going, and not even understanding where I was. But yet I held on, kept faith, and I just kept going, and those journeys and experiences led to a lot of investigative, we can call it self-research or research on trauma and whatnot, to pretty much every corner of this planet that I went and basically self-studied how other countries and religions, races, and peoples deal with trauma. Like I quite literally traveled the world to learn this stuff. And it brought me to a lot of realizations, that we'll end up getting into as well. But I
Yeah.
learned what is post-traumatic growth, right? Which is basically the definition of resiliency, right? The definition of reinvention, because when you're connected to another human being like that, and your path forward is built on hope, expectations, dreams, and purpose, marred with that person. When you remove that, and I go back to Vancouver and I walk into that room and her hair is on that pillow, I can't stay there.
Yes.
And the concept of pain that people don't even think about, or because you don't even think about this stuff. I had to get back her stuff.
Yeah.
Every gift I had ever given her, every magnet we collected on that fridge, every Christmas ornament that we hung on the tree, every card I ever wrote her that she had
Mhm.
tucked away somewhere, I
Mm.
had to get it back. I never understood the level of pain
Yeah.
that would come with getting back. Like, no, because you're thinking, I'm giving this as a gift, but to get it back in that context, and I learned in Thailand, so that's a Buddhist country, and Sweden being half Malaysian,
Mhm.
me and her, like I grew up Catholic in Newfoundland. I just didn't really follow. I would, more identify like a Christian path, but I don't. I'm open to all concepts because our default programming, your race, your religion, and your culture, we're all default programmed, right? Like we're all born atheists, to be honest, and
Right.
then we are told what religion we're
Oh,
going to be
yes.
or represent. But through my experiences, the Catholic piece was a bit too over my head, too traditional. I did end up, you know, uh, becoming sort of what you call like a born again Christian. I was actually baptized in the Tennessee River, and that's a
Oh,
hell of a story that we should
we
actually make a
will
note on
dive
this
into
one.
that like
That's actually a super
cool story.
insane believer story that we should. I never even shared that
I'll
with
write
you.
that down.
I did because
Okay, good.
that's madness. That story is
Okay.
just
We'll
that's
get to
just a
that.
different level. Yeah. So, if you were to ask me back then, in 2013, March 15th, right? You talked to me in Sweden, so the accident was on March 31st. If you were to ask us, what kind of religion are you into, it, I probably would have said, kind of Buddhist. Um, and I do believe in a lot of Buddhist tenets because Buddhism, in theory, is not necessarily religion. You can be an Islamic Buddhist, you can be a Catholic Buddhist, you can be a Hindu Buddhist. There's probably 1,400 existing religions around the world. Who are we
Absolutely.
to say what is what? We're not, right? To each their own. So it's fine
Well,
as
and
long as we all
and
believe.
now, just sorry to interrupt, but
No,
now
no, yeah,
it's
yeah, no,
just your source. I'm like it's a source. And if is your source is here, there, and everywhere, there's no name for it. It's just a source that you go to for that comfort. And
yeah,
that's
that's right.
how I see it too as well. Yeah.
Yeah, which still goes back to community. It's still
Community,
all about
absolutely.
community and storytelling and
Absolutely.
sharing and comforting and
Yeah,
validation, right? And
absolutely.
that's what this is all about, right? And
Yeah,
that's what
absolutely.
this whole conversation is about. It's about meeting people where they are, not where you want them to be,
Yeah,
right? Being supportive, validating, caring, empathy,
yeah.
compassion,
Passion. Yeah.
being a leader, being a mentor, helping people heal, helping people walk through their own fires. Damascus steel is considered one of the strongest, most beautiful steels on this planet. And
Mhm.
how is it forged? You put that steel into the fire. You take it out and you fold it. The Japanese, this is how they built their samurai swords. And then you put it back into the fire and
And
you
then you
fold
fold.
it. And every
Mhm.
time, and this is like kind of like, compare this to lived experience. Every time you go through adversity, every time you go back into that fire is an opportunity to become strong. It's an
Absolutely.
opportunity to add a layer of lived experience, add a
Absolutely.
layer of understanding, right? If we so choose to embrace it. And this is where that concept of like mentorship and leadership comes into play because, and I learned this, the hard way, but it made me stronger again, right? I learned the hard way, but, and I because I see, solutions. I'm not focused on the challenges anymore,
Right.
right?
Yes.
I am who I am, and I do what I do because I have met adversity head on, and I have learned how to flip the switch to make it an opportunity of growth, an opportunity of storytelling, and an opportunity to help other people through their own journeys, right? And that's a hell of a skill. And again, that's underpinned with energy, by Suyen, all sorts of higher powers, all sorts of factions,
Yes.
and like I said,
Mhm.
before I move on, like, what is my story? Basically, I'm telling the story of self trauma that led to resiliency, determination, fortitude, tenacity. Maybe a sprinkle of attitude in there. And thank God I'm a smart person because if I wasn't intelligent, maybe I wouldn't have survived. But intelligence led me to be resilient, and it provided opportunities and options. Like I said, traveling the world, teaching English,
Yeah.
making connections, contacts, learning other systems, has certainly played a big role, right? So,
Right.
in terms of that nursing piece, it's ironic, that
Mhm.
I ended up meeting Suyen in the healthcare field, because that wasn't my intention, right? I did psychology, sociology. I traveled and taught English, and I remember coming back to Canada. I just thought, like, I really like traveling. I love it a lot, and
Love
I
it.
love being away from my house because, like I said, right, it wasn't a safe place. So, what are my options here? So, what I actually did, I went to university and applied to get into the faculty of engineering. And they said,
Oh,
yeah, sure, come on board. However, you don't have your second year calculus completed. So it was only first year because I focused
right.
on sciences. And they said, it's still going to take you 4 years. I was like, oh, shit, that's a long time. I was more like, I want things done.
I'm going to
I want to
channel
do this.
understand.
Yeah. I was like, oh, God, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And then one of my friends said, did you know there's a thing called the fast track nursing, extremely competitive. I think to get into the U of A, like fast track, I think you had to be like, what, 96%, average. It's insanely competitive.
Insanely.
Um,
Yeah.
maybe,
Still is.
5,000 applicants. Yeah, maybe 5,000 applicants, 20
Yeah.
spots, that kind of thing. And they said it's a 2 year degree, if you have, some real contributions. And like I said, at that time, I was already had done research in medicine, research in nursing. I was, lots of good ideas, smart enough, and good enough. I got in, met Svienne, and then who knew that that same path would take me through the loss of her and that experience, and then a complete revitalization of myself, mind, body, and spirit, encompassing her, encompassing the journey,
Yeah.
rising from the ashes like a phoenix, um, and then actually dedicating my life, which I have and I do, literally dedicating my life to the concepts of philanthropy and empowering others. So years later, I had gone back to Mon University and started a scholarship or a bursary in Suyen's name. It's called the Suyen Lam Bursary,
Yeah.
and it actually empowers or provides funding to every year that pays for a semester for two students in the Faculty of Nursing to help complete their studies.
Oh, that's
Um,
amazing. Yay.
and the inauguration of that I went to, and it was like beyond emotional, because I put a lot of money into that. And even if you read that online for bursary, you
Yeah.
won't see my name. You won't see my name on
Right.
that because I didn't want my name to be put there. I wanted
Right.
that to be reflective just of her,
Yeah.
and I wanted to create legacy for her.
Sure. Yeah.
So that being said, fast forward now, we're almost at 12 years come along next March. Um, there's so much to talk about. But last week I had so much. So last week I had a conversation with a group called Myriad Canada. So Myriad Canada is going to be working with me, and I'm creating an international foundation that's going to be called the Swian Lam and Mark Wade Scholarship for Aspiring Healthcare Providers.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
what I'm going to be doing by funding it myself, as well as setting up opportunities for tax deductible charitable organization for people to contribute to, I'll be targeting universities again in Southeast Asia because in the Western world, we're doing okay. I want to target students, who may have grown up with some adversity, like myself.
Yeah.
Swan was the oldest of five. She also had a broken home. So, we and
Yeah.
her had a lot more connections than I thought. I want to target individuals who may have gone through adversity but have been resilient, who are determined, who are rather intelligent, who do want to help other people, but are socioeconomically disadvantaged. And my scholarship will be aiming to provide them with a full scholarship from start to graduation,
Excellent.
which will empower them. And again, it goes back to the same thing. I want to empower the individual, to empower the family, to empower the community.
Right.
And when I do this internationally, I'm looking to empower these individuals to have impacts on the world at large.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so
That's
never stop dreaming,
wow.
never stop
It sounds
dreaming,
like
never
it's
stop
going to be
hoping. Yeah.
fantastic. And wow, I'm fingers, this is going to change. This is why I like storytelling, because you meet someone like yourself that's doing the small steps to change our world that's in chaos right now and chaotic. And I don't even, like, for myself, I don't even want to go outside because it's so chaotic. And but again, like you said, you take that problem and you put the passion into it. And this is what I'm doing now with this podcast, because people have stories to tell. People will say, oh, interesting, and resonate with you. So it makes that baby step a little bit easier to get forward instead of go backwards. And we're all seriously,
Exactly.
we're all frogs because I never seen a frog go backwards. I've always seen a frog go forward. So
Yeah,
it's kind of great. I would like to ask you though, right now, is your mantra was at the end, is always at the end of your emails. How did you come up with that? Because I love mantras. I'm an affirmation girl coming from way back. Was introduced to me when I was in my ego state where like nothing's gonna fix me. Blah, blah, blah. I do affirmations, but that mantra is huge and it resonated so much with me that I might actually start saying it to myself. How'd you
yeah,
come up with that?
no, yeah, because because good question. You know,
Did I stump you?
no, it's just it's a lot more powerful, and I think people
Okay.
will. I can say it, but I need to I need to give a preamble to it,
Okay.
because when I say it on its own, it is how many words is it? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven
Yep.
words.
Yeah.
But that doesn't do it justice, right? So, when I didn't know what post-traumatic stress was when I went through this experience, and I avoided everything and anything that had to do with Suen, any reminding, any remembering,
Mhm.
and so one day I was in northern Alberta working with my work family, because after Vancouver I couldn't return to Vancouver after Sweden. It was too hard, and I ended up in northern Alberta where I was doing contract work with Sweden. We were up there for like 6 years, and we had met a nice little community of people there. And I was working in the emergency department, and one of my best friends, and this is a whole story too. I traveled to Italy with this gentleman. His name is Andrea Santorini. You know, he's also a nurse from Ontario, and I met him in actually a high level Fort Vermilion,
Okay.
Alberta, working together at a little hospital. I ended up actually, before Sweden passed away, I had actually gone to Italy with him to disperse of his mom and dad's ashes, who had passed away within the same year. And that was really devastating for him. So I went to support him. And, when Sweden passed away, this is sad, but no one from her family came to Thailand to
Oh,
help support that situation. But Andrea, he's one. My brother and father at the time came over. My brother, I think he found it too, was just too much, and he had left early. But Andrea, he just hopped on a plane and came over. So, he was with me in a difficult time, and I was with him in a difficult time. And I'm just going to share a little piece here. There's everyone understands the concept of bag of bones, but they don't understand where that comes from. So in Buddhist countries, I was kind of ambling with that earlier, the concept of Buddhism and whatnot. But so I'll finish that because this is where I was actually going with it. Sorry,
that's
I
okay.
usually go out around. I usually go way
That's
out and I
okay.
come back in.
That's okay. No worries.
Uh, so the bag of bones comes from in Thailand when Swam was cremated. It was on an open fire. Um, so like I said, at that time, if you were to ask me March 15th or 16th, me and Svian, hey, well, what kind of like religion or faith do you lean towards? I would say Buddhism. Today, I go a bit more, I said Christian and a little bit of Hindu, a little bit of Buddhism, because I spent a lot of time in Bali, Indonesia, what they call the island of the gods. But they cremate you on an open pyre, you could say, and then the fires are not hot enough. It doesn't do any destruction to the bones. It just sort of burns away tissues and skin
Yeah.
and organs. And then they end up at the end of that ceremony, there's monks and there's chanting, and it's very powerful, and painful, of course. And then at the end of it, they pass you a burlap sack with the bones of that person.
Okay.
And then what you do, because their concepts of cremation are sort of different than how we visualize it in the West, you go down to like usually the ocean. This was in Koh Samui, and then you open up that bag and you take out these bones and you throw them into the ocean, because the
Yeah.
calcium which dissolves, becomes just part of every organism, and as like, even as the waters evaporate and go up to the clouds, it creates rain, which we end up drinking. So their concept of cremation is that we're all stardust in essence, and we are all literally parts of one another, right? Because everything that we eat comes from something living. We give back out into something that's going to grow from us.
Mhm.
The water that we drink that comes from the sky actually comes from organisms and whatnot, that
Mhm.
we live in a cycle of flow amongst ourselves. we are the today, we exist because there's how many generations of people from before us that provided the genetic DNA that we are today. Like
Right.
we're not truly individuals in that way. We are everything and everyone, whether it's from what we drank, the fruit we ate, whatever, anything that ever existed is in us right now, and
Mhm.
we will be that again in the future.
Right.
Like I said, we're stardust. We are everything that you can be, everything that whatever existed is in us
Mhm.
at every step of the way, right?
Okay.
Um, so that concept of bag of bones, that was a difficult one. So after that, I was like, yeah, I'm not a Buddhist because I'm not prepared. We whitewash the concepts of death,
Absolutely.
in
Yeah.
North America.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, and I'll segue into that too. But over there they don't, right? They don't. They're like, feel it, own it, process it. Whereas here, you're in the hospital, someone passes away, they put a little, they're like, oh, sorry, your loved one passed away. Let's go have a little chat. And then you're just kind of on your own, making a funeral arrangements and doing all
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
stuff. And you don't even have time ceremonially, or you don't have time via ritual to truly embrace that. And a lot of trauma and pain comes from that because then you just kind of, people are left on their own. And
Yeah.
in our medical system today, physicians in the ER system, they can't consult psychologists.
Yeah.
And if you go see a psychiatrist, this is not really their realm because that's more for like prescriptive medicine.
Right.
What you need is ceremony and ritual and community and family and
Yeah.
and guided through mentorship. You don't need pills. You don't need a group chat. You need family and structure, and you need someone who's been there to help guide you and mentor you. And that's obviously where, I come into play today in a multitude of ways. Um, but that's sort of so again, right? This is the long way through. So you said, what is your mantra? My mantra came to be because as I was hurting along the way, I didn't realize, like years after Sweden, if I tried to like date again,
Yes.
like I said, like you eat a chocolate bar and you throw up, you won't touch a chocolate bar again. So imagine in your brain that thing that gave you the most love in your life, ironically or paradoxically, is also the thing that caused the greatest pain you've ever experienced.
Yeah.
Do you not think your brain is going to set up a mechanism by which, if you were to meet
Um,
another human, once you get to a certain level, and your brain goes, oh, that feeling, danger, danger, danger,
mhm.
shut it down.
Shut it
Your
down.
brain will do everything in its power to protect you, and it will shut it down.
Mhm.
So along that way, I had met after Sweden years later, some really amazing people, but I didn't know the process I was going through, and I hurt people inadvertently because I dated people who were amazing and I cared for them, but I didn't know what was happening. But when I got to that level of caring for them, my brain just shut it down. It just shut it
Right.
down, and the person was left being like, "What
What?
happened?"
Yeah,
And I was
exactly.
like, I don't know. The feelings are just, it's gone. Attraction, like it's just like,
Done.
but I didn't know what was happening, and my hurt was vicariously hurting other people.
People.
But then the flip to that, as I started to heal, and share my story, and like there's a million pieces to the story, right? There's so much. We
Oh,
haven't
yeah.
got we haven't got into anything. We don't, we haven't even talked about what I do for work. But
Get to that.
this is just a background, right? But
Yep.
as I started to heal and meet other people, through storytelling and sharing, I ended up getting involved with the Canadian Mental Health Association and sat on their council of people with lived experience. I traveled around Canada doing talks on trauma and talks on post-traumatic growth. And I started noticing that, people come after me afterwards and crying, literally, and they're saying, your story, it touched me. Your story is powerful. Your story
Mhm.
deserves a platform. It's amazing what you've done with this. Your level of resiliency is just not of this world. And do what you do. So my mantra became, and because I live it, and I see it. No
Mhm.
one hurts alone, and no one heals alone, right?
Yeah.
And this ties into everything I do today. And today I'm heavily focused in terms of research, planting the seeds of tomorrow today in terms of community involvement, student involvement, empowering students,
Yes.
through leadership, through collaboration, through innovation, through mentorship, right? So, that mantra, no one hurts alone, no one heals alone, is not just 7 words. It is the mantra by which guides my life. It's the mantra by which the Sui and Lam and Mark Waite Scholarship for Aspiring Health Providers will be created. It's the mantra by which the Sui and Lam bursary in Newfoundland exists. It's the mantra that has tied me in, to people we'll talk about later, like your Sharon Andersons and
Yeah.
Jazz and Meat Paramers and your Darlene Shindles and your Tammy Laudners and your Cindy
Yeah.
Sims and Indy Tours and Balraj Mans and Denise
Absolutely.
Milneys and Tara Prestons and all these brilliant, and yourself, like even yourself, right? No one hurts alone, knows and heals alone. So what are you doing? I'm providing a voice, you're providing an ear, and we're sharing, we're storytelling.
Yes.
We are helping, even this conversation, we are working together to provide voice, mouth, ear to others, right? We are embodying ourselves. We're embodying that mantra of no one
Yeah.
heals alone, right? No one hurts alone, no one heals alone. This conversation is helping people heal, whether we see that today or not.
Yes.
So it is not 7 words. It is a life changing,
Yeah.
embodying, empowering phrase,
Yeah.
right? That underpins everything I do through the energies of Suyen. And every time I network, and some people meet me, they say, yeah, you're damn authentic, but what's in it for you? And because I'm very altruistic, I'm not in this for the money. I'm not in this for fame or
Yeah.
I'm in this because I see the need. I see the needs, and I'm a solution focused person. And when I see a need, I instantly see a solution, and I know how to provide it. Uh, because when you come that close to death yourself and you survive and you become that resilient, you post-traumatic growth is a gift. You get gifts, hypervigilance, hyper intuitive, hyper empathetic, hyper compassionate.
Yeah.
I can see things and read things that a lot of people can't. And then I go to work to use the skills I have to empower others through either, networking, building community, and when you take brilliance and you introduce it to other brilliance, you just get brilliance squared.
Yeah.
You create a movement, a
Yeah.
powerful movement,
Yes.
right? Guided through passion and authenticity. And what you can do and the things you can overcome and the problems that you can solve, there are no limitations to this.
That is fabulous. And you know what? I think we should end on that right now. And we're gonna do a part 2, part 3. I don't care. Part 4, part 5. I don't care because this you oh wow, I could just listen to you forever. But please say your mantra one more time because I think everybody out there needs to hear that.
And really feel it. If you're the kind of person, if someone's listening to this and you really want to understand this, I want people to learn from this and grow from this and understand from this and whatever impact it has on people it has, but because I want people to know they're not alone, right? That's important too. And I want to let people know that, if you're looking for someone passionate, if you want to come alongside someone, I'm here. We can work together to solve so
Mhm.
much, and I've dedicated my life to empowering others, and that mantra it's so powerful but so simple. No one hurts alone. Because if you are hurting, you're going to vicariously hurt others. And I did, and I've been there. And then I had layers of pain to work through, right? And to learn and grow from, and I still hold that to this day. But then at the same time, once you pass through that, no one heals alone.
Mhm.
As you heal, your story and your authenticity will also serve to heal others and empower others and to lead as mentor and lead as leader, to take other people from the brink and
Yeah.
carry them forward through their own transformation, their own experience from becoming Damascus, from their own evolution of this of the the of rising from the ashes, you
Yes.
know um no one hurts alone, no one heals alone is
So,
empowering, right?
mm,
It's empowering. And
I
people out there,
love
if someone needs to hear that, know it and understand it and believe in it and hold it to be true. And you'll grow. And there's others people there, right? Like you said, you're providing an ear, we're sharing a voice, we're storytelling, we're doing what humans do, and this is how we survive, right? This is how we
And
survive.
this is amazing. And I thank you very so much for coming on and sharing this wonderful, beautiful story. And we're going to do it again because we have lots to talk about and we're coming back. And I want to just
I
say
look forward to
that
that.
if I'm going to put your contact information if anybody wants to, if that's okay, if
Sure.
anybody wants to
Absolutely.
reach out to you, because this is a community to be built, to be
Yeah.
built. We're not alone. I
You do
totally
you,
love
right?
it.
You
You
do
do
you.
you. Yes,
Empower. You do
and
you. Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Mark,
Thank
for
you.
joining me
A
today.
pleasure.
And we're going to do
My
this again. We're going to go part
pleasure.
two, man.
I look forward to part two. I look forward to
Always,
part two.
always.
Excellent. Thank you for the time. Thank you
You're
for the
very
opportunity.
welcome.
With absolute respect and gratitude, Adonica. What you're doing is amazing.
Oh,
It's
thank you.
beautiful, and let's watch this grow. This is amazing
Absolutely.
movement. This is a movement. You're creating a movement,
Oh,
and you have my support. You're an earth angel, so
thank
embrace
you
that
very,
and know
very
that.
much. And we're going to talk soon again.
Excellent. And you have a great day.
You too. Bye now.
All right, thank you. Bye.